Hello, my name is John Humphreys. I am the Florida Department of Environmental Protection's Mitigation Banking and Uniform Mitigation Assessment Method Coordinator. This video is the first in a four-part series dealing with landscape ecology and terms and concepts often discussed as part of the Uniform Mitigation Assessment Method's location and landscape support scoring attributes. Concepts covered by this video include spatial structure and function, the species-area relationship, and the species-distance relationship. In landscape ecology, structure can be defined as physical objects that exist in the environment. For example, vegetation, streams, lakes, roads, buildings, and the like. Often it is beneficial to describe this structure to a high level of specificity, such as low-quality mixed hardwood forest vegetation, freshwater less than 5-acre lakes, infrequently traveled unpaved roads, etc. Rather than describing individual objects located in the environment, it is often beneficial to describe structure in groupings of sufficient homogeneous character as to be assessed as a single unit. This concept is comparable to the idea of an assessment area as referenced by the UMAM rule. This is also similar to the idea of an ecological patch. Patch simply refers to the habitat of focus for a particular assessment or study. Everything surrounding the patch is commonly referred to as the matrix. To aid in understanding the patch and matrix relationship, it is useful to think of the example of oceanic islands. Here, mangrove islands representing habitat can be viewed as patches, whereas the surrounding marine waters can be described in terms of a matrix. However, ecological theory tells us that no patch exists as a completely isolated island. So not only do isolated islands serve as a good example of the patch-matrix relationship, but so do habitats found in terrestrial systems, including those located in urbanized or developed landscapes. Ecological theory also tells us that no two patches are identical. Each has unique attributes, and rarely is the matrix homogeneous in character. So another way of thinking about structure is to view it as the pattern depicted on a map. For example, this land cover map is color-coded with each color representing a different type of environment. Some of the colored areas represent residential areas. Some of the depicted patterns represent reservoirs, and others represent natural communities. Each of these distinct patterns represent the presence of structure in the landscape, and each can be interpreted in terms of the patch and matrix relationship. Interpreting natural landscapes in terms of the patch-matrix relationship helps inform us of underlying biological processes. For example, the theory of island biogeography makes several predictions based on the distance between two given patches and the areal extent of those patches. One prediction is that the closer a given patch is to a source of fish, wildlife, or plant propagals, the more likely it is to be colonized. Island biogeography also predicts that resource availability increases in proportion to the extent of the patch. Resource availability and immigration rates, in turn, can be used to predict the probability of species extinction within a given patch, such that the risk of extinction decreases with increased area, and immigration rates decrease with increased distance from the source patch. The species area and species distance relationships may also serve to buffer a particular patch against extinction. For example, imagine that each of these circles represents an individual patch, each with its own suite of species. If one patch should experience extinction or genetic erosion, the chance of that degraded patch to be recolonized from a more distant patch is decreased. It is decreased because even if propagals leave the source patch, crossing the intermediary matrix is difficult and energetically expensive. However, a patch located in closer geographic proximity may be positioned to better facilitate recolonization and thereby counter species decay. This idea is known as the rescue effect. So the rescue effect also reduces the risk of extinction and assists in understanding the complex interplay between migration and immigration as functions of habitat size and spatial dispersion. This idea is known as source sink dynamics, which simply refers to the analysis of species interactions in a heterogeneous system. Remember, think of structure as the pattern depicted on a map. All patterns can be described in terms of composition and configuration. Composition and configuration collaborate to either facilitate or inhibit wildlife mobility and energy exchange. Composition and configuration determine and quantify the amount of structural connectivity in the landscape, and as a result, predict the underlying functional connectivity between fish, wildlife, and plant species. Taken as a whole, these factors define the degree of isolation exhibited at a given patch. Therefore, before one can undertake a meaningful evaluation to determine if a particular species is isolated or at risk, both structural and functional connectivity must be contemplated. For additional information, please visit the Uniform Mitigation Assessment Method website. Thank you.